My name is Ethan, an unremarkable corporate drone. One moment, I've been passionately grinding on the company's never-ending project for 72 hours straight. The next moment, everything went black, and I gloriously keel-ted over and died at my desk. I thought it was the end. Unexpectedly, it was another beginning. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself standing in a vast drawing room decorated in resplendent gold and jade, fit for a palace. Opposite me sat a middle-aged couple, impeccably dressed and exuding an aristocratic air. Their gazes on me were full of complex emotions, 20 years of affection, an inescapable guilt, and a touch of distance and finality. A memory that wasn't mine surged into my mind like a tide. Me, Ethan, I had transmigrated into a book. I had become the fake young master, the expendable imposter who was swapped at birth with one of the male leads, the real young master Caleb, in a melodramatic novel called Mistaken Love of the Wealthy, the CEO's Runaway Bride. According to the original plot, I, the fake young master who was raised as a biological son by the Johnson family and lived in splendor for 20 years, was exposed today. Meanwhile, the real heir of the Johnson family is currently sweating and hauling bricks at some unknown construction site. The middle-aged couple before me are my adoptive parents, Johnson Group's chairman David and his wife Emily. After learning the truth, the original owner could not accept the huge fall from the clouds into the mire. His mentality completely twisted. He was jealous of and resentful toward the returning real young master Caleb, and used every vicious and disreputable means to frame and suppress him. In the end, he not only failed to take anything back, but was thoroughly despised by his adoptive parents, driven out of the house, and finally died tragically in a car accident on a rainy night. A typical tragic cannon fodder in a wealthy family power struggle. Ethan, across from me, Emily, my nominal mother, spoke first. Her eyes were rimmed with red, her voice full of struggle and pain. You already know, it's our Johnson family. I'm sorry to you, and more sorry to our biological son. Beside her, David sighed and pushed a check in front of me. Here is 10 million US dollars. His voice was low and authoritative. Consider it compensation from the Johnson family for the past 20 years. You take this money and leave. We'll tell others you were sent abroad to study. 10 million US dollars. Severance pay. This was the trigger that shattered the original owner's mindset and sent him toward ruin. I looked at that thin check, then at their expressions of, we're sorry, but we have to do this. And in my heart, there wasn't a trace of the original owner's anger, resentment, or unwillingness. In my heart, there was only ecstasy, 10 million US dollars. I don't have to do anything, and they just give me 10 million US dollars. Is it really such a good deal? In the 21st century, I nearly burned myself out for a monthly salary of a few thousand, and in the end, I worked myself to death. Now, I only need to nod a little, and I can instantly get 10 million US dollars, achieve financial freedom, travel the world, and live as a happy freeloader doing nothing. How is this not a bolt from the blue? This is clearly windfall wealth, an outrageous fortune. I forced down the curve of the corner of my mouth that was about to fly into a crazy grin, striving to make myself look a bit sadder, a bit more dejected, to fit my current role as the abandoned fake young master. I lower my head, my shoulders trembling slightly, and let out a suppressed sob. Dad, Mom, I began in a choking voice full of grievance and reluctance. I understand. I don't blame you. Finding my biological brother is a tremendous thing. I've long wanted to go out and fend for myself, to prove myself. It's just, I can't bear to leave you. David and Emily across from me looked even more guilty when they saw how understanding I was. Emily even covered her mouth and began to sob quietly. Good child. My good child. It's Mommy who's wronged you. Mom, please don't say that. I stepped forward and gave her a gentle hug. Then, with a righteous, disdainful of money demeanor, I pushed the check back. I can't accept this money, I said. You raised me for 20 years. I could never repay that kindness in a lifetime. Now my brother is back. He has endured 20 years of hardship, and this money should go to him as compensation. David and Emily were both completely cowed by my display of high moral character. They probably didn't expect that their son, who had been spoiled by them since childhood and pampered to the core, would, faced with such a huge upheaval, not throw tantrums, but instead act so sensible, so considerate, so heartbreaking. No, you must take this money. David's tone was more resolute than ever. This is what we owe you. That's right, Ethan, just accept it, or Mom will feel uneasy for the rest of her life. Emily cried as she urged me. I looked at them and declined once more. In the end, under their firm insistence, I was utterly helpless and tucked that $10 million check into my pocket. The script is finished. The money is also in hand. Next, this would be the first step toward making my salted fish dream come true. Dad, Mom, I looked at them, a sincere, hope-filled smile spreading across my face. Since we're family, shouldn't we immediately, right now, bring my older brother, who's suffering at the construction site, back home? We should give him the grandest, most enthusiastic welcome ceremony. This outrageous wealth should finally be his to personally enjoy and inherit. David and Emily, looking into my bright, sparkling eyes full of concern for brother, were once again completely moved by my damned, selfless brotherly love. And in my heart, I was screaming like crazy. Hurry, bring him back. Let him inherit the family fortune. Let him deal with these aristocratic power struggles. Let him go to work for me. All I want is to take my $10 million and the monthly living allowance afterward and travel the world. Brother, my dear brother, your unfortunate little brother has come to bring you home to inherit this $1 billion estate and $1 billion troubles. David and Emily were moved to tears by my words. They immediately told the butler to prepare a family reunion dinner and ordered that the best room in the house, the master bedroom that originally belonged to me, be cleaned and redecorated to welcome the real owner's return. As for me, I naturally took on the glorious and arduous task of finding my real brother. Dad, Mom, you shouldn't come. I refused their request to accompany me with righteous conviction. Brother has suffered outside for 20 years. Suddenly seeing you might make him very emotional. It's better if I, his younger brother, go. I can communicate with him more easily. We're young and have things in common. Actually, what I was thinking inside was, please don't. You too, with your whole noble, wealthy family heir driving a Rolls-Royce to a construction site. That picture is too beautiful for me to look at. Don't scare my brother away. Where on earth am I going to find another perfect pot cover hero like him? David and Emily thought I made a good point, so they entrusted the whole matter to me. They not only gave me the address, they also sent the family's steadiest driver, John, who drove me there in the most understated black Mercedes. Sitting in the soft, comfortable back seat, I enjoyed the air conditioning, drank iced juice, and watched the rapidly passing street scenes outside the window. I felt an unprecedented sense of ease. Is this what life for rich people is like? Simple and happy. The car drove westward, leaving the bustling city center behind, and the surroundings gradually grew desolate. Tall skyscrapers gave way to low factory buildings, and the clean asphalt road turned into a rutted dirt track. Finally, the Mercedes stopped at the entrance of a huge construction site, dust billowing everywhere. At the construction site's entrance hung a huge sign, Blue Bay Plot Number 1 Project Apartment. I remember the book mentioned this was a real estate project under Johnson Group. Good grief. The true young master is carrying bricks on his own construction site. This setup is truly ironic. I got out of the car, told John away at the door, and then, alone, walked into this place that was a completely different world from my previous life, full of sweat and dust. On the site, machines roared and dust billowed. The workers wore dirt-stained work clothes and hard hats, sweating profusely under the scorching sun. I was wearing a pristine designer casual outfit, completely out of place in this setting. My appearance immediately drew everyone's attention. They looked me over like an unexpected guest with curious, probing eyes. I ignored them and walked straight up to the foreman who was directing the crane. "Sir, hello," I asked politely. "I'm looking for someone named Caleb." Is he here? The foreman was a dark-skinned man. He glanced me up and down, his eyes showing a hint of caution. What are you here for? I'm his brother. I gave what I thought was the most harmless, most sincere smile. The foreman paused, clearly taken aback by my brother act. He pointed to a nearby building under construction, still just a concrete frame. There, over there, 17th floor, he's carrying cement. Just arrived today, a kid who can take a lot of hard work. I thanked him and walked toward that building. The construction elevator wasn't installed yet, so I had to take the stairs. When I arrived at the 17th floor, out of breath, I saw him at a glance. Caleb. He was wearing a gray t-shirt so worn that its original color was unrecognizable, and cargo pants splattered with mud. He was tall with broad shoulders. From years of physical labor, his muscles were well-defined and solid. At this moment, he was bare-chested, casually shouldering a heavy sack of cement. His dark skin was beaded with glistening sweat that sparkled in the sunlight. The contours of his face were deep and rugged. Between his brows and eyes, there was indeed a 7 or 8 resemblance to my fake Father David. Only his gaze was completely different. It was a pair of eyes full of vigilance, endurance, and stubbornness, like those of a wild wolf. When he saw me, his steps faltered for a moment. He set down the cement on his shoulder, frowned, and looked at me. This intruder who didn't belong here, with a scrutinizing, hostile gaze. I ignored his look and walked straight up to him. I looked at his face, a little tired from the labor, yet still unmistakably handsome. Then I looked at his hands, made somewhat rough by the cement. A wave of indescribable excitement and warmth rose in my heart. My relative, my dear brother, my own good brother, who can shield me from all the storms of the rich and let me be a carefree slug. I could no longer contain my excitement. Stepped forward and grabbed his hand. Caleb's body instantly stiffened, his gaze becoming even more guarded and dangerous. He probably thought I was some wealthy second-generation brat looking for trouble. However, what I said next left him completely dumbfounded, frozen in place. In a tone filled with deep compassion, guilt, and the joy of reunion. Utterly sincere, I said to him, Caleb, my dear brother, I finally found you. Stop moving bricks here. Quick, come home with me. Our family has billions of USD in assets waiting for you to inherit, and a bunch of petty power struggles waiting for you to clean up. This incredible wealth, finally, it's your turn to inherit it. Caleb, he looked at me, and in those wolf-like eyes, for the first time, confusion appeared. He probably thought that his younger brother, me, might have a few screws loose. In the end, I half-dragged, half-pulled Caleb down the stairs. He stayed in a state of high-alert silence the whole way. Those sharp eyes kept measuring me, as if trying to decide whether I was a con man or a lunatic. When he saw the expensive black Mercedes at the construction gate and the respectful driver John standing by the car, his wariness deepened. Get in, bro. I enthusiastically opened the car door for him. He didn't move, just looked at me coldly. What exactly do you want to do? Take you home. I answer matter-of-factly. Brother, I know you must have a lot of questions right now, but trust me, I mean no harm. Once we get home, you'll understand everything. Maybe it was my overly sincere, Oscar-worthy eyes that moved him, or perhaps he was already so resigned about his miserable life that he no longer feared anything. In the end, he remained silent, bent over, and got into that luxury car that was completely at odds with his current appearance. The car drove smoothly away from the construction site. Inside the carriage, the atmosphere was a bit awkward. Caleb leaned against the window, watching the rapidly receding, increasingly prosperous scene outside without saying a word. His body was tense, like a leopard ready to fight at any moment. As for me, I was thinking about how to hold a grand and perfect transfer of power ceremony when we got home. 1 hour later, the car slowly drove into a top-tier affluent neighborhood, heavily guarded and shaded by lush trees. Finally, it stopped in front of a huge villa that occupied a vast lot, complete with gardens and fountains, like a castle. Caleb looked at the mansion before him, one he had only seen in movies, and for the first time, there was a flicker of emotion in his eyes. The car door was pulled open. The entrance was already packed with people. At the head stood my nominal adoptive parents, David and Emily. Behind them were the butlers, maids, and gardeners in matching uniforms, fully a dozen or more. Everyone watched Caleb as he stepped down from the car, wearing a tattered work outfit and still flecked with dirt, with excited, curious, and slightly anxious expressions. When Emily saw Caleb's face, so similar to her husband David's, she could no longer hold back. She covered her mouth and began to cry softly. David's eyes were red too. He stepped forward, his lips trembling, wanting to say something but not knowing where to begin. "Damn, Mom." I timely broke that deeply moving reunion scene. I took the still dazed Caleb by the hand and walked up to them. Then I cleared my throat and, in a voice as loud and solemn as an MC's, loudly announced to everyone, "I hereby declare, the true heir of the Johnson family, my long-lost elder brother, Mr. Caleb, welcome home ceremony now officially begins." I led the way and clap, clap, clap applauded. The butler and servants behind me immediately caught on and followed, enthusiastically applauding. Amid the applause, David and Emily completely broke down. They stepped forward, one on each side, taking Caleb's hands, their tears pouring like rain. "Child, my child, I'm sorry for making you suffer. You're home now. And Caleb, the tough guy from the construction site, who could carry 200 pounds of cement without changing his expression, suddenly looked at a loss when confronted with this unexpected familial affection that had been 20 years late. His body was still rigid, his eyes full of confusion and a faint, hardly perceptible longing. I looked at this touching scene of the whole family reunited and nodded in satisfaction. Very good. The first step was a complete success. Next was the second part of the ceremony, the handover of power. I pulled them along and walked into that resplendent, gilded living room. Then, in front of everyone, I began taking my things one by one out of the master bedroom that had originally belonged to the real young master. "Brother, this is your room. It has a private walk-in closet, study, and bathroom, and its view is the best in the whole villa." I then went to the garage, took out a long string, no fewer than a dozen luxury car keys, and shoved them into Caleb's hand. "Brother, this is your garage. Lamborghini, Ferrari, Rolls-Royce. Take whichever you like. Oh, by the way, that red Ferrari was the birthday present Dad gave me last year. I haven't driven it much. Now it's yours." Finally, I took from my dad David the black gold credit card that signified the Johnson family's heir, with no spending limit, and solemnly handed it into Caleb's hand. "Brother, this is your card. Swipe it as you please, buy whatever you want. The pin is your birthday. Oh, which is also my birthday." Having done all that, I clapped my hands and felt a weight lift off me. I looked at Caleb, who was completely bewildered, and at my equally bewildered adoptive parents, and gave a satisfied, mission-accomplished smile. "Dad, Mom, brother," I said, "now everything has been returned to its rightful owner. From now on, this household will be up to my brother. As for me, I plan to take that little severance pay you gave me and travel the world, chasing my poetry and distant horizons. We, never to meet again." After I finished speaking, I was about to turn and leave with a flourish. However, a rough, powerful hand suddenly grabbed my wrist. I turned back and met Caleb's deep, complicated, wolf-like eyes. "Wait," he spoke, his voice hoarse, yet filled with an undeniable power. "Until I figure all of this out, you're not allowed to go anywhere." "Me, The script somehow feels a little off again. In the end, I still couldn't successfully leave after achieving my goal. Faced with Caleb's unquestionable gaze and my foster parents' tearful plea of "Ethan, you can't go. This is your home too," I, the former fake young master, had no choice but to suppress my pride and temporarily stay in a guest room. That night's family dinner was so awkward you could scrape out a 3-bedroom apartment with your toes. On a long dining table that could seat 20 people, only the 4 of us were seated. Emily, my mother, kept piling food onto Caleb's plate. The way she did, it was as if she wanted to make up in one meal for the delicacies Caleb hadn't had in the past 20 years. "Caleb, try this Australian Wagyu steak. I specially had the chef cook it medium well." "Caleb, This Alaskan king crab is very fresh. Eat more. Caleb, this bowl of Buddha jumps over the wall was simmered all afternoon by Aunt Lee at Mom's request. It's the most nourishing. Caleb's bowl quickly piled up into a little mountain. He, however, simply sat in silence, head bowed, using the knife and fork in his hands in an extremely slow and unfamiliar manner. Clearly, he wasn't used to this Western way of dining. There was no joy on his face, only a deep estrangement that clashed with his family and discomfort. My dad, David, on the other hand, stood beside him, attempting to concern himself with Caleb's future development in the tone of an elder. Caleb, you've been working hard out there. Starting tomorrow, don't go to the construction site anymore. I'll have your Uncle Wong arrange a vice president position for you at the company so you can get familiar with the business. Caleb's hand, holding the knife and fork, suddenly tightened. He looked up, and a cold sneer flashed across those wolf-like eyes. He probably thought this was yet another condescending act of charity from the upper class. It looked like this reunion dinner was about to turn into a tragic outbreak of class conflict. This lubricant who only wants to be a couch potato, have no choice but to step in again. I put down my knife and fork and clear my throat. Ahem ahem. Everyone's gazes focused on me. First I gave my parents a helpless look that said, "You can't do this." Then I turned to Caleb and began my live lesson on how to survive in a wealthy family. "Bro," I said to him in an incredibly natural tone, as if we'd known each other for 20 years. "First, this steak, if you think it's overcooked or not to your taste, just tell Annie Lee and have her make you another dish in a Chinese style, like sliced beef and spicy broth. Remember, in this family, your palate is the highest standard." I then pointed at the towering pile of dishes in his bowl. "Second, treat Mom's enthusiasm as a sweet burden. If you don't want something she offers, politely put it on the side plate. Don't force yourself. Otherwise, she'll give you even more tomorrow." Emily's face flushed slightly. Finally, I looked at my father. "Dad, my brother just came back and knows nothing about the company's operations. If you make him vice president, that's not promoting him. That's putting him on a spit to be roasted. Which of those old foxes in the company will accept him? Won't they treat him like an airdrop crown prince and find all kinds of ways to trip him up? I think it would be better to have my brother start as your special assistant, staying by your side, listening more, watching more, learning more. That way he can quickly understand the company and build authority. What do you think?" David was momentarily stunned. Then he showed an approving look. He felt that the son who had been raised by his side for 20 years understood his thoughts better. When I finished speaking, the entire dining room fell into an eerie silence. Caleb looked up and gave me a long, deep look. In that gaze, there was less caution and hostility and more curiosity and incomprehension. He probably couldn't understand why I, the fake young master whose identity and everything he stole, would care about him so sincerely. Of course I was thinking about him. "My dear brother, if you don't properly inherit this family, take care of the company, and put those monsters and demons in their place, how could I possibly lie back and live the carefree, salted fish life? You are, after all, the greatest guarantee of a stable retirement life for me for the next few decades." "Brother," I gave him an incredibly bright, brotherly smile. "From now on, in this family, if there's anything you don't understand, ask me anytime." After all, I lowered my voice to a volume only the two of you could hear and whispered, "When it comes to how to be a proper young master of the Johnson family, I have 20 years of rich experience. Guaranteed teaching until you learn, or your money back." Caleb looked at me, and that face of his that was always taut and rugged seemed to have a faint, almost imperceptible loosening. After that awkward dinner, my standing in the Johnson family became somewhat strange. I was no longer the nominal young master, but it seemed no one treated me like an outsider either. My adoptive parents, David and Emily, remained full of guilt and affection toward me, even more indulgent than before. They were afraid that with Caleb's return I would feel neglected. And Caleb, the real young master, His attitude toward me shifted from initial wariness and hostility to something complex, inquisitive, and acquiescent. He acquiesced to my continuing to live in this house. He acquiesced to my giving him all kinds of privileged family survival guidance, like a senior. He also acquiesced to my idling away each day, eating and waiting to die. And I, too, was perfectly content with a clear conscience beginning my laid-back life as an outsider attached to a wealthy family. The first thing I did was to carry out, completely and thoroughly, a return to original owner handover ceremony. I voluntarily moved out of the master bedroom that occupied the third floor of the villa, over 200 square meters, gilded and resplendent like a palace, and into a guest room on the second floor. Only 100 square meters, but just as full of sunlight. Bro, I said, pulling Caleb along to tour his future chamber, see? This room was specially designed by an Italian designer at Dad's request. All the furniture inside was air freighted from Europe. That bed is the same model used by the Swedish royal family. Apparently, it can automatically adjust firmness based on your sleeping posture to help you sleep peacefully. In this walk-in closet, I opened a hidden door is bigger than the whole apartment I used to live in. The seasonal haute couture inside was all prepared by Mom for you. Although I think most of the styles are hard to describe, but don't worry, I've already blocked her taste. For now, and I'll pick your clothes. Caleb looked at the room full of gorgeous clothes, brands he couldn't even fully recognize, and then at the t-shirt he was wearing, which the servants had washed clean after he came back from the construction site, but which had already faded and fell silent. I let him down to the garage again. In a huge, temperature and humidity controlled garage sat a row of steel beasts that could make any man go crazy. Lamborghini, Ferrari, Rolls-Royce, Bentley. I shoved a heavy keyring, with at least a dozen keys on it, into his hand. Bro, these are all yours now. I waved grandly. Drive whichever you want. But my personal recommendation for a new driver is to start with that Mercedes G-Class. High ground clearance, durable. Oh, and that red Ferrari F8 was Dad's gift for my 18th birthday last year. I haven't driven it much. Now I'm officially handing it over to you. Its roar is insane, perfect for picking up girls. Caleb held the heavy keychain, looking at the supercars before him that he had only seen in magazines and online, a complex light flashing in his eyes. Finally, I led him to the study. I pulled from my Dad David's desk drawer that thin yet weighty, symbolizing the Johnson family's heir supreme power, the black gold credit card with no spending limit. With an extremely solemn and sacred demeanor, I placed the card into his hand. Brother, here. I patted his shoulder. The password is your birthday. Oh, which is also my birthday. From now on, this household is yours to decide. Buy whatever you want. Don't save money for anyone. After all, I added with meaning, this money was always yours. Having done all this, I felt as if I had completed a sacred ceremony of transferring power. My whole being was uplifted. Feeling light as air, I turned to leave, ready to enjoy my life as a salted fish. Wait a moment. Caleb suddenly spoke, calling out to me. He looked at me, and those deep eyes were full of bewilderment. Why? He asked the question he'd been holding in for a long time. Why are you doing this? Don't you hate me? I took everything from you. Your parents, your home, your identity. I looked at him, at his face full of guardedness and confusion, and suddenly laughed. Brother, I said, you've got one thing wrong. You didn't take everything from me. You just took back everything that was always meant to be yours. As for me, I shrugged, saying nonchalantly, I'm just returning things to their rightful owner. Besides, I leaned into his ear and, in a voice only the two of us could hear, whispered, to be honest, being the young master of the Johnson family is really exhausting. You have to learn equestrianism, golf, 8 languages, and deal with so many fake relatives and business partners. I long ago wanted to quit. Now that you're back, that's wonderful. From now on, all these troublesome matters will be handed over to you. Brother, you really have to do your best. My deadbeat life is completely up to you. After I said it, I even gave his shoulder a hearty pat to show my encouragement. Caleb looked at me, looked at my eyes full of sincerity, full of that, I really just want to lie flat, dead fish glow. He was silent for a very long time. In the end, he picked the Ferrari F8 key out of that bunch of keys and took that black gold card out of his wallet. Then he put both of those things back into my hand. The car is still yours. This card is an auxiliary card with no spending limit. From now on, you will still be the Johnson family's second young master. As long as I'm around, you'll forever be so. He finished speaking, and before I could react, he turned and walked out of the study, leaving me alone, clutching the car keys and black card, standing there completely, utterly disheveled in the wind. The script is wrong again and again. I don't want to be the second young master. I just want to be a plain, unremarkable layabout who gets pocket money. Although my complete retirement plan has been temporarily shelved because of Caleb's forceful plea to keep me. But I still got my wish and began the leisurely dream life of salted fish. My daily routine was to sleep until I woke naturally and then contemplate which sports car to take out today or which card to use to order an afternoon tea befitting my status as second young master of the Johnson family. And my good brother Caleb officially joined the Johnson group the next day, beginning his miserable, airbound corporate slave life. He started as his father's, David's, special assistant. I was the one who suggested this position. The purpose was to let him learn, as quickly and comprehensively as possible, how the entire group operated and to uncover those turbulent undercurrents lurking beneath the surface. And the largest of those undercurrents was our dear second uncle, Robert Johnson. Robert is David's biological younger brother and a vice president of the Johnson Group. In the original story, he is an ambitious, smilingly treacherous hypocrite. He has long coveted the chairman's seat, regards me, their adopted son, as a thorn in his side, and sees Caleb, who suddenly returned, as both his greatest threat and opportunity. He would exploit the friction between Caleb and the Johnson family and the group, constantly setting traps for him and creating trouble, trying to prove that Caleb was unfit for his position, thereby undermining David's standing and achieving his own rise. Sure enough, on Caleb's third day at work, second uncle Robert took the initiative to come calling. That night, he arrived at our house carrying 2 bottles of rather expensive red wine. Big brother, sister-in-law. The moment he stepped in, his face was all smiles and overflowing warmth. I heard Caleb is back, so I came to see him. This kid is really cut from the same cloth as you when you were young. He affectionately took Caleb's hand, fussing over him like a doting elder. Caleb, I'm your second uncle. From now on at the company, if there's anything you don't understand, just ask me. Don't be reserved with your uncle. Caleb simply nodded coolly and withdrew his hand. By nature, he was wary of people who were overly enthusiastic. Robert didn't mind. He smiled cheerfully and looked at me. Ethan's here too. A faint, barely noticeable sneer and calculation flickered in his eyes. I heard you haven't been going to the company lately? Resting at home? That's fine. Young people should relax more. I leaned back on the sofa and yawned. Yes, second uncle. My brother is back. From now on, this family will rely on him. As for me, I can finally step back after my achievements and enjoy life. Exactly. Robert slapped his thigh as if he'd found a kindred spirit. Caleb is the real heir of the Johnson family. Ethan, you should just be a wealthy idler. From now on, second uncle will take care of you. As he spoke, he gave me a knowing look. I understood immediately. He was trying to win me over. He thought that the fake young master whose identity had been stolen, must be full of resentment and unwillingness. He wanted to use me to deal with Caleb. In the original story, the original owner was indeed taken in by his few words like that. He became one of his most useful and most foolish tools. Unfortunately for him, today he ran into me. I looked at his smiling face, a smile that hid a knife, and in my heart I sneered coldly. But on the surface, I immediately put on an overwhelmed by favor expression, laced with a trace of resentment and reluctance. Thank you, second uncle. I lowered my head, my voice a little aggrieved. You're still the one who's good to me. At the sight of an opportunity, Robert smiled even more benignly. At the dinner table, he went all out. First, he seemingly casually brought up Caleb's glorious years of carrying bricks at construction sites. His words were full of praise, but in reality, he was reminding everyone that Caleb was a crude man who couldn't be shown off. Then, he pretended to be concerned and asked about the difficulties Caleb had encountered at the company. "Caleb, I heard you rejected the budget for that project in the south of the city yesterday," he asked, seeming casual. Caleb frowned and nodded. "Oh, you're still too young." Robert adopted the tone of a worldly elder. "The person in charge of that project has been fighting alongside your father for decades. He's a bit stubborn. What you did will chill an old retainer's heart. Young people need to learn to be flexible, to understand human relations and the ways of the world." His words sounded high-minded and airtight. Not only did he sow discord between Caleb and the company's veterans, he also implied that Caleb doesn't understand the rules and acts on impulse. And my dad, David, after hearing that, also frowned slightly, clearly swayed by those words. It looked like Caleb was about to take this first silent loss. This troublesome younger brother, had no choice but to log back in once more. I put down my chopsticks and suddenly, innocently asked, "Second uncle, there's something I don't understand. My brother is the company's special assistant. Isn't his duty to lighten Dad's burdens and to safeguard the company's interests? If, out of fear of offending people, he turns a blind eye to obviously problematic budgets, then what difference is that from those corrupt pests who only know how to embezzle and form cliques to serve their own interests? My brother, this is truly what's best for the company and for Dad, right?" The moment I let out that innocent remark, the entire restaurant went silent in an instant. Robert's smiling face froze for the first time. Caleb, however, raised his head and looked at me deeply. In that look, there flashed a slight smile that even he himself hadn't noticed. Second Uncle Robert's little scheme was ruined by his supposedly innocent younger brother with just a few words from me. He was slapped in the face by reality and left sullenly. Since then, Caleb's attitude toward me changed subtly. He no longer merely tolerated my existence. He began to actively move closer to me. After work, he would come to my room, ostensibly to check on his younger brother, but in reality to take out various thorny problems encountered at the company and consult me, the former young master. The real estate project in the west of the city, Second Uncle insists on using the contractor he recommended, and Dad is somewhat swayed. What do you think? The new marketing director is Second Uncle's man. Several of the marketing plans he's recently proposed are all style and no substance. How can I reject them without seeming like I'm targeting him? At next week's board meeting, Second Uncle and his faction will definitely make trouble. What do I need to prepare? He treated me as his secret strategist, and I was happy to play the role. After all, the more secure his position, the more guaranteed the comfortable, off-the-books life of someone like me in a wealthy family would be. So every day, I played games, sipped my soda, and used the God's eye view I'd learned from novels to advise him on state affairs. Brother, you must not let Second Uncle's people get involved in that West City project. I kept my eyes on the game character on the screen and said casually, according to the script, that contractor is a shell company. Second Uncle wants to use this project to launder the group's funds into his own pocket. Right now, send someone you trust to check their transactions. Make sure the audit is airtight. Don't worry about that director in the marketing department. I took another sip of cola. He won't last long. He's been embezzling company funds to support his mistress and has picked up a gambling habit. Have Uncle Lay, Dad's bodyguard and close aide, investigate. Give it 3 days and we can nail him and Second Uncle behind him. As for the board, I yawned. Don't worry, brother. I've already prepared a gift for you. Caleb listened to my masterful strategy, and his expression grew deeper and more puzzled. He couldn't figure it out. How could I, a playboy who for 20 years only knew eating, drinking, and having fun with no real skills, be so intimately familiar with the company's tangled personnel relationships and business traps? Where exactly is my information coming from? Is there someone standing behind me? Ethan, he finally couldn't help himself and asked, "Who are you really?" I was in the middle of a crucial moment in the game, and without looking up I answered, "I'm your brother." "I mean," he emphasized, "where are you getting all this information from?" "Oh, that." I smiled, finally tearing my eyes away from the screen and turning to him, putting on an inscrutable smile. "Bro, do you know? In this world, there's a thing called talent. I am precisely the kind of once-in-a-century business prodigy. Although I'm not in the world of power and intrigue, tales of me are everywhere in that world." Caleb, he looked at my deadpan nonsense and felt his intelligence subjected to an unprecedented insult. But he had to admit that all the suggestions I gave were so precise. It was like I had opened a divine eye. Just as we were bonding like brothers while discussing company secrets, my mom, Emily, walked in carrying a plate of cut fruit. "What are you two whispering about this time?" she asked with a smile, her eyes full of pride. Nothing made her happier than seeing her two sons, one biological, the other adopted, get along peacefully. She set the fruit plate down, then took out 2 gold embossed invitations and handed them to us. "Next weekend is your Uncle Zhang's charity dinner. Prominent people from all walks of life will be attending. Both of you will come with me and get to know some people." The moment I heard the words dinner party, my head started to ache. What I hate most are these hypocritical social occasions. I was just about to refuse, but Caleb was one step ahead of me. He took the invitation, then glanced at me and said calmly, "Fine, we'll go. However, Mom, I have one condition. Ethan's dinner suit must be chosen personally by me." Me? I looked at his expression of absolute certainty and suddenly had a very ominous premonition. Could this guy be trying to get revenge on me? My ominous premonition was soon confirmed. The day before the charity gala, Caleb had someone deliver a gown that could only be described as a disaster. It was an outrageously designed, flashy pink suit with enormous ruffles and lace. Wearing it, I felt like I wasn't going to some high-end gala at all, but rather running to be the village's Teacher Tony image ambassador. Bro, are you serious? I looked at the version of myself in the mirror like a walking flamingo and felt my sense of taste trampled like never before. Caleb leaned against the door, arms folded, watching me at his leisure, a barely noticeable, scheming smile tugging at his lips. "I think it suits you. Very lively." Me? I had pretty much figured it out. This guy is taking revenge on me. Before getting revenge, he said the Lamborghini he gave me was an ugly color. This man, how can his heart be smaller than a needle's tip? But me, Ethan, am I the kind of person who easily gives in? Of course not. Isn't it just dressing like a flamingo? As long as I'm not embarrassed, it's everyone else who will be. So, on the night of the banquet, I calmly put on that flashy pink battle robe. I even outfitted myself with a matching flashy pink pair of sunglasses and a rhinestone-encrusted swagger stick. When I, in that dazzlingly blinding look, linked arms with my remarkably handsome elder brother Caleb, who was wearing a low-key luxurious bespoke suit, and we walked into the banquet hall together. We instantly became the center of attention. Everyone's gazes, like searchlights, converged on us. There was shock, incomprehension, ridicule in their eyes, and a faint, indescribable hint of pity. I could clearly hear the whispers coming from around us. "My God, is it the second young master of the Johnson family? What? Did something happen to him? I heard he's a fake young master. Was he kicked out of the family and gone insane? Look at the one beside him. That's the real young master, right? Such presence. What a pity to have such a younger brother. How embarrassing." Beside me, Caleb's facial muscles twitched distinctly. He probably didn't expect that when I wanted to embarrass him, he himself would become a laughingstock in other people's eyes, a gullible older brother who brought along a psycho younger brother and made a public spectacle. He wanted me to lose face, but in the end it was both of us who made a huge fool of ourselves. We killed 800 enemies, but harmed 1,000 of our own. I could feel his hand on my arm, applying a slight pressure. I turned my head and gave him a dazzling smile that said, "Bro, don't be afraid. I'm here." His face went even darker. Just then, our good second Uncle Robert, holding a wine glass and smiling, walked toward us. Behind him followed a shifty-eyed man I recognized as Uncle's confidant and the person in charge of the problem project in the south of the city, Mr. Smith. "Oh, isn't that Caleb and Ethan?" Robert's gaze lingered on the flashy pink suit I was wearing for a full 3 seconds, the amusement in his eyes practically overflowing. "Ethan, your outfit today is quite something." "Uncle Robert, you're too kind." I smoothed an imaginary bow tie and said proudly, "My brother picked this out for me himself. He said it represents our brother's bright and prosperous future." "Caleb," the corner of Robert's mouth twitched. He ignored me and turned to Caleb, wearing an expression of earnest seriousness. "Caleb, I heard you rejected the contractor I recommended." Caleb replied coolly. "Ah, you're still too impulsive." Robert sighed. "Mr. Smith, you come over and personally explain to Caleb the strength and qualifications of our contractor." That Mr. Smith immediately nodded and bobbed, came forward, and began to speak at length, boasting about the glorious history of his shell company. Caleb frowned, about to open his mouth to retort, but I suddenly tugged on his sleeve. Then I beat him to it and gave that Mr. Smith an impossibly innocent smile. "Hello, Mr. Smith," I said. "I heard from my brother that the project in the southern part of the city that you're in charge of seems to have run into a bit of trouble." Mr. Smith's expression changed slightly. "Second young master, you must be joking. The project is proceeding smoothly." "Is that so?" I blinked, took my phone out of my pocket, and opened a voice recording. Inside, clearly, were the full conversations I had accidentally recorded in the study a few days ago. Him and second Uncle Robert discussing how to use inferior materials, cut corners, cook the books, and siphon company funds. The moment the recording played, Mr. Smith's face instantly went as white as paper. And second Uncle Robert's smiling face finally, completely split apart. That accidentally recorded clip was like a heavy bomb detonating in the banquet hall. Although I didn't play it loudly, the nearby bigwigs who pricked up their ears for gossip heard every word crystal clear. Second Uncle Robert and that Mr. Smith's faces turned even uglier than pig liver. "You're talking nonsense. This is fabricated." Robert sputtered, pointing at me. "Forged." I put away my phone and looked at him with an innocent expression. "Second Uncle, I just thought your conversation with Mr. Smith was full of business wisdom, so I wanted to record it to study it carefully. Could it be? Is there something in it that can't be heard by outsiders?" "You." Robert trembled with anger, but couldn't refute a single word. My father, David, after listening to the recording, had that always authoritative face instantly cloud over as if it could drip water. He gave Robert a cold look, then said to his assistant beside him, "Go and invite Mr. Smith to the discipline department for a good talk." Mr. Smith's legs went weak on the spot, and he collapsed to the ground. A scene meticulously staged by second uncle to embarrass Caleb in front of everyone was completely foiled by me, this flamingo little brother, in an utterly absurd way. Not only that, second uncle even lost one of his key lieutenants. It could truly be said that he lost both his wife and his soldiers. From then on, Caleb completely let down all his guards with me. He seemed to have finally accepted that I, this younger brother, though I appeared unreliable, was genuinely dependable when it mattered. He no longer treated me as an outsider to be guarded against, or a trouble who needed looking after. He began, truly, to regard me as his ally and strategist. Every day after work, the first thing he did was come to my room, lay out all the company matters, big and small, and discuss them with me. The accounts at second uncle's overseas branch have always been problematic, but we don't have evidence. Do you have any ideas? There are a few old men on the board who are second uncle's people and have been paying lip service while undermining things. I want to replace them. Where should I start? Next month, the company will bid on the plot in East City. Our main competitor is Taylor Corporation. Where do you think our breakthrough lies? And I, without shirking, firmly took my seat as Johnson Group's chief unofficial golden consultant. Every day, I sat cross-legged on the bed in my comfortable silk pajamas, eating potato chips while giving him a deep plot analysis. An overseas branch? Easy. Do you remember the original book mentioned that second uncle had a lover who was a model, and he used company funds to buy her a winery abroad? Follow that thread and investigate. I guarantee you will dig up indisputable evidence of his embezzlement. The old board members? Even easier. That director surnamed Chien. His son is up to his neck in gambling debt. The one surnamed Sun, his daughter wants to get into showbiz. And the one surnamed Lee. I took all the passing background notes about minor characters from the original book and used them, giving him one precise attack vector after another. As for the land in the east of the city, I smiled and tossed him a document. Brother, this is a bid proposal I put together when I had nothing to do. Take a look. I guarantee it'll make Taylor Corporation lose everything down to their underwear. Caleb looked at me, his eyes full of shock. He picked up the proposal and, after flipping just a few pages, was completely won over by my wildly imaginative ideas and the rigorous, thorough data analysis. He realized that I, the brother he had always thought was a blockhead, actually possessed frightening talent and instinct for business. Ethan, he looked at me, and in his voice there was a trace of something he himself hadn't noticed, pride and self-satisfaction. How did you think of these things? I already told you, I said, raising an eyebrow arrogantly. I am a once-in-a-century business prodigy. Caleb looked at my smug expression, shook his head helplessly, and smiled. That smile had no defense, no calculation left in it, only the purest warmth and trust that belongs between brothers. I looked at him and smiled too. I knew that our peculiar brotherhood alliance was, from this moment on, truly unbreakable. With Caleb and I working together inside and out, second Uncle Robert's power within the company was being dismantled step by step. His loyalists planted in various departments were, for one ostensibly reasonable reason or another, overtly or covertly removed. Several of the seemingly perfect projects he proposed were also thoroughly dismantled by Caleb, using the spoiler information I provided. Robert's vitality was severely damaged. He could only temporarily tuck his tail and behave, no longer daring to act rashly. As for Caleb, by virtue of his outstanding abilities and decisive methods, he quickly established his authority within the company. No one dared anymore to treat him as a wild kid who came back for the construction site. Everyone knew that this young, true heir was not someone to be trifled with. The company's situation had temporarily stabilized, but life in a powerful family was never just about work. There were also all sorts of headache-inducing family social obligations. So, my grandmother, the matriarch of the Johnson family, had finally reached her 80th birthday. The Johnsons are a large clan, several aunts and uncles, and all kinds of collateral relatives, adding up to well over 100 people. On the day of the birthday banquet, the Johnson ancestral home was decked out in lanterns and decorations. Guests filled the halls, and the place was buzzing with excitement. As for me, I, together with Caleb, became the centerpieces of the entire event. All the relatives gathered around the two of us, looking us over with curious, appraising, and calculating eyes. Oh my, this must be Caleb, right? All grown up. Had a rough time out there, I suppose. A third aunt wearing a chi-pao and jade bracelets took Caleb's hand and said insincerely, "Yes, not like our Ethan. Born with a silver spoon, soft-skinned and pampered, clearly destined for a life of wealth." Another distant cousin with a sharp, simian face sneered in a mocking tone. Their words pretended to be concern, but in truth each sentence struck Caleb straight in the heart, was reminding him that he, this real young master, was actually an outsider. And it was also hinting to me that I, this fake young master, should no longer cling to this family. Caleb's expression gradually turned cold. He disliked these hypocritical, scheming occasions. As for me, I remained true to my couch potato nature the whole time. I held a glass of juice, found the least conspicuous corner to sit in, and started concentrating on my phone game. When anyone spoke to me, I replied with the 4-1 words, really, haha, mainly projecting an attitude of impenetrable indifference. However, There are always those oblivious people who insist on walking straight into the line of fire. A flashy, overly made-up cousin of uncertain relation, holding a wine glass and swaying her hips, walked up to Caleb. "Caleb, cousin," she said in a coquettish voice, "I heard you used to work on construction sites? That must have been so hard, right? Not like our cousin Ethan, who's been a young master since childhood and never has to do anything." Her words were full of contempt and provocation. Caleb's expression instantly grew cold, and that cousin of mine seemed not satisfied yet. She then turned her spear toward me. "Ethan, cousin, you've enjoyed the blessing of cousin Caleb for 20 years. How is it that you're still clinging to the Johnson family and won't leave? Your nerve is a bit thick, isn't it?" The moment she said that, the surroundings instantly fell silent. All the relatives watched us with the amused eyes of people watching a show. They were all waiting for the two brothers to, because of this provocation, turn on each other and become enemies on the spot. I kept my head down, playing my game, pretending not to have heard. It's not that I don't want to fight back, but I know someone will be faster than me. As expected, the next second, Caleb moved. He stepped forward. His tall frame completely blocked me behind him. Then he looked at that flamboyantly dressed cousin, and from those wolf-like eyes flashed a terrifying, icy cold glint. His voice was not loud, but like an ice pick, clear, piercing into everyone's ears. "First," he said, "where I work, what hardships I've endured, none of it is your concern. Second," he paused, his gaze sweeping over all the relatives watching the spectacle. "Ethan is my brother Caleb's brother. He was in the past, is now, and will always be. You can talk about me, but you are not allowed to talk about him. Anyone who dares to say one more disrespectful word to him, don't blame me for not showing any family mercy. Make him completely disappear from the Johnson family genealogy." After he finished speaking, the entire banquet hall fell deathly silent. You could hear a pin drop. That arrogant cousin had already been frightened pale and couldn't utter a word. As for me, I sat behind him, looking at his broad back, which exuded a protective posture. In my heart, for the first time, a strange, warm feeling welled up. So it turned out. So this is what it feels like to be protected. Seems not bad. That scandal at the birthday banquet made all the Johnson relatives see Caleb in a new light. They finally understood that this real young master who had returned from outside, taciturn and reserved, wasn't a pushover to be toyed with, but rather a hungry wolf who would bite and defend his own. Since then, no one has dared, in his presence, to speak ill of me, the fake young master. My relationship with Caleb also underwent a qualitative leap because of this incident. Between us, there is less of the calculating, probing ally dynamic and more of the true tacit understanding and trust that belongs between brothers. He was no longer someone who only discussed business with me in the study. He began, at the dinner table, to complain to me about the bizarre people and things at the company. At today's meeting, second uncle brought up another impractical plan, and I shot it down on the spot. His face turned all colors, as if he were a painter's palette. The new director in the marketing department is a suck-up. His PPTs are flashy, but have no substance. And I would also tell him about which takeout place I discovered today, or about the teammate from hell I ran into while gaming. We began, like real brothers, sharing each other's daily lives. We even developed a shared hobby, playing online games together in my room. A suit-clad conglomerate CEO worth over 100 billion USD. A scion of a wealthy family in silk pajamas, a slovenly layabout. Two people sat cross-legged on the carpet, each with a controller staring at the huge projection screen, turning red in the face over a virtual item in the game. "Bro, you stole my kill. You're just trash. Bullshit. You sneaky bastard. You backstabbed me again. All's fair in war. Damn it. I'm not playing with you. We're breaking up. 1 minute." At times like that, my mom Emily would carry a fruit plate, stand in the doorway, and watch the two of us with a smile that wouldn't quit. She probably thought this was what a home should look like. As for my dad David, he would just turn a blind eye to our distracting behavior, because he noticed that ever since Caleb started playing games with me, his whole demeanor had relaxed. He was no longer that constantly taut lone wolf, full of vigilance and aggression. A smile began to appear on his face. His gaze also became much softer. He began, truly, to become part of this family. One night, the two of us had another thoroughly satisfying game. Caleb leaned on the sofa, drinking a cola, and suddenly, out of nowhere, asked me a question. Ethan, do you really not want to go back to the company? With your abilities, being a CEO would be more than enough. I stifled a yawn and answered lazily, I don't want to. My ideal is to be a good-for-nothing. Why? He asked, somewhat puzzled. Because I looked at him and smiled. In this world, there must be people who gaze up at the stars, and there must also be people who keep their feet on the ground. Brother, you are the kind of person suited to conquer the stars and the sea. As for me, I'm more suitable to, under your protection, calmly and steadily be a happy, salted fish illuminated by starlight. After I finished speaking, I even gave me a sign. Caleb looked at me and was silent for a long time. Then he reached out his hand and, like my dad often did when I was little, ruffled my hair. Okay, he said, and in his voice there was a gentle smile I had never heard before. From now on, I'll be the one to conquer the stars and seas, and you will be responsible for being my salted fish little brother. At that moment, the moonlight outside the window was just right. I knew that we had truly become brothers. Watching my relationship with Caleb grow better by the day. The happiest of all were my parents, David and Emily. That peace in their hearts, the immense guilt and the rift caused by the switched baby, seemed to be, little by little, being repaired by this peculiar brotherly bond of ours. They began, truly, to try to understand and accept Caleb, the biological son they had owed for 20 years. Emily was no longer just awkwardly and blindly serving him food. She began to learn what Caleb really liked to eat. She discovered that he didn't like Western food and preferred richly flavored home-style dishes. So she dismissed the home's Western chef and hired a top Sichuan chef at a high salary. Every day, she made him variations of shueju, fish, maoxuang, and spicy chicken. She learned that Caleb grew up in orphanages and on construction sites and has a sensitive stomach. So every day, she would personally cook a bowl of stomach-soothing porridge for him. She even secretly went to that dilapidated rental where Caleb used to live, took back the few faded old clothes he had left there, washed them by hand, folded them neatly, and put them into his huge wardrobe filled with haute couture. She said, "These are witnesses to Caleb's past 20 years. They can't be thrown away." And my father David no longer expressed his fatherly love only with cold titles like vice president. He began, on weekends, putting work aside and taking Caleb fishing and hiking. He would, like any ordinary father, awkwardly teach him how to bait a hook and how to cast a rod. He would, at the mountaintop, point to the distance, to the Johnson Group's iconic headquarters building, and say to him, "Caleb, look, that is the Johnson family's realm. In the future, it will be yours. But you must remember, it's not just wealth, it's also responsibility." He began, without holding back, to pass on to the son he had lost and found his life's business experience and wisdom. And Caleb, within their somewhat clumsy but genuinely loving interactions, bit by bit melted the ice in his heart. He was no longer that lone wolf who kept his guard up against everyone. He began to proactively serve dishes to my mother at the dinner table. He began to hand my father a cup of warm water when he coughed. He began to, like a real son, share his joys and sorrows with them. This household seemed, at last, to finally be getting back on track. Everything was progressing in the most beautiful direction. However, we all knew, beneath the calm surface of the water, a tremendous undercurrent was surging. Our good second uncle, Robert Johnson, would absolutely not let things end so peacefully. He was like a venomous snake lurking in the dark, waiting for the best moment that could strike us all dead in a single blow. And that moment came soon. Second Uncle Robert's patience had clearly run out. After several attempts to set a trap for Caleb, all of which my brother and I had thwarted in various peculiar ways, he finally tore off that false mask of the benevolent elder and prepared to launch an all-out attack. He knew very well that with David's backing, Caleb had already grown formidable. Within the company, it was now very difficult to shake his position. If he wanted to seize power, the only way was to breach from the outside. He began secretly contacting Johnson Group's biggest rival, Taylor Corporation. It's them Oliver Taylor and his family of good-for-nothing second-generation heirs. The ones I shut down with the cake is delicious. He also used the loyalists he'd planted in the company over the years and some business secrets. He had to start secretly shorting Johnson Group stock. For a while, the market was rife with negative rumors like Johnson Group's funding has been cut off and the Johnson family's heir lacks ability, causing serious internal strife. Johnson Group's share price began to fall sharply and persistently. The entire conglomerate was plunged into a state of storm-tossed turmoil, and Robert was plotting to, at next week's annual board meeting, join forces with Taylor Corporation and every minor shareholder he could buy off to launch a decisive palace coup against David and Caleb. He intended to impeach David's chairmanship on the grounds of mismanagement causing serious harm to shareholder interests, and with righteous justification, seize control of the group. The plan was insidious, ruthless, and flawless. In the original book, second Uncle Robert used this very trick to successfully seize the Johnson family's fortune. And the original owner, that foolish fake young master, acted as his most effective accomplice in the scheme, ultimately meeting the fate of being discarded once he was no longer useful. Unfortunately for him, this time he was facing me and my good brother Caleb. Bro, don't worry. In the study, I watched Caleb, frowning over the company's plummeting stock price, and leisurely took a bite of potato chips. If he wants to bring about his own downfall, then let's make him fall even more completely. Right now, you only need to do one thing. Gather all the liquid funds we have on hand. Then, on my command, at the most critical moment, throw them in hard. Caleb looked at me, and those deep eyes were filled with trust. He didn't ask why. He only nodded firmly. Okay. I knew that the final showdown, one that would decide the fate of the Johnson family and determine the quality of my lazy life for the coming decades, was about to begin. And I had long since prepared for our dear second uncle a super big gift he would absolutely like. The night before the boardroom showdown, the entire Johnson family mansion was shrouded in a heavy atmosphere. My dad, David, spent the whole night in his study on the phone, trying to steady those wavering minority shareholders. My mom, Emily, was restless, constantly praying for us. Only Caleb and I acted like nothing was wrong, still playing online games together in my room. Bang! I controlled my character and, with one shot, took out the last enemy. On the screen, the words "Winner, winner, chicken dinner" popped up. Done. I put down the controller and stretched. Caleb also set his controller down. He looked at me, and the face that had been tense all this time finally showed a trace of relaxation. "You're not nervous at all?" he asked. "Nervous about what?" I yawned. "The one who should be nervous is second uncle." I pulled a huge safe out from under the bed. Then, in front of Caleb, I opened it with an extremely complicated password. There were no gold, silver, or jewels in the safe. Only stacks upon stacks of thick documents and a USB flash drive. "What is this?" Caleb asked curiously. "This is," I smiled, pushing all the items toward him, "the trump card I prepared for you, for our Johnson family. These are all the dirty secrets I've collected over the past few months, based on the original book's plot, combined with my own investigation, about our dear second Uncle Robert Johnson. Included here are all the financial records and transaction flows showing how, from the company's founding, he embezzled, took bribes, and lined his own pockets. There are all the photos and videos documenting his improper relationships with a dozen female subordinates and celebrities, using his position. There are all the emails and call logs proving he secretly colluded with rival Taylor Corporation to sell out the company's trade secrets. There were even his overseas that secret money laundering winery certificate of ownership and transfer records. What did you get these?" Caleb looked at the evidence before him that would be enough to put Robert away for life, utterly shocked. He knew I was investigating, but he didn't expect that I would, in such a short time, investigates so thoroughly? I told you, I said, lifting an eyebrow proudly. I am a business prodigy. Of course, I didn't tell him. Half of this was thanks to the original book's spoilers, following the map step by step. The other half came from the black card he gave me, with which I paid top wages to hire the world's best private investigators and hacker team. Money power can sometimes really make anything possible. With this, I handed him the USB drive that contained all the electronic evidence. At tomorrow's board meeting, you can rest assured and let him jump. The higher he jumps, the worse he'll fall. Tomorrow will be quite a show. I looked at Caleb and gave him a confident smile that said, "Watch me carry this." Caleb took the USB drive and gripped it tightly. He looked at me, and in those deep eyes for the first time, there was a light almost like admiration. He probably thought that his younger brother was simply able to do anything. "Ethan," he was silent for a long time, then suddenly spoke solemnly to me, "Thank you. What's there to be polite about?" I waved my hand. "Who are we kidding? From now on, you inherit the family fortune. I inherit you. We are half-brothers with different fathers and mothers, real brothers." Caleb, he decided to take back that tiny bit of admiration he had just felt. The next day's annual board meeting was held as scheduled. All of Johnson Group's senior executives and shareholders gathered together. The atmosphere in the conference room was so tense it could squeeze water out. Second Uncle Robert, dressed in a sharp suit, wore a beaming expression as if victory were certain. Seated beside him were several directors he had long since bought off, and a representative from Taylor Corporation. As soon as the meeting began, Robert struck first. He took out a report he had long prepared about the company's recent stock plunge and project losses, and, with righteous indignation, accused my father David of poor management, and accused Caleb of being unworthy of his position and incapable of great responsibility. Then he proposed that, for the future of the Johnson Group, and for the benefit of all shareholders, they should re-elect the chairman. The board members behind him immediately and loudly echoed him. For a moment, the entire conference room was filled with voices supporting him. My dad David was so furious his face went pale. Clutching his chest, he could barely speak. As for Caleb, he just looked at him coldly, at this good second uncle he had been playing for half his life, and said nothing. Just as Robert thought the outcome was decided and was about to call for a vote, the conference room door was pushed open. I, wearing a casual t-shirt and jeans with a lollipop in my mouth, strolled in at a leisurely pace. "Sorry, I'm late." I waved to everyone. I was playing a game and lost track of time. Everyone looked at me as if I were crazy. Only Robert's expression changed. He had a bad feeling. "Ethan, this is the boardroom. This is not a place for your nonsense. Get out," he barked. "Don't, second uncle." I smiled, walked to the projector, and plugged in my USB drive. "I'm just here to show the board a little interesting material." The next second, the gigantic projection screen began to play the glorious life of our good second Uncle Robert Johnson. From his first embezzled sum to intimate photos with his nth lover. From the emails in which he sold the company's secrets to his decadent, drunken lifestyle at an overseas vineyard. One by one, piece by piece, the evidence was conclusive and irrefutable. The entire conference room fell silent in an instant. All the directors looked at Robert with the same disdain they would reserve for trash. Robert, meanwhile, had already gone ashen, collapsing limply into his chair. He knew he was finished. "Oh, right," I said, as if remembering something, and took out another document, handing it to my father. "Dad, this is all the evidence that second uncle and Taylor Corporation maliciously shorted our company stock. Also, this is 5% of the company's outstanding shares that I bought back with my own, a little pocket money, at the lowest point. Now, I'm the third largest shareholder of the Johnson Group, besides you and brother." My father, David, looked at me, looked at the papers, and was so moved he couldn't speak. In the end, second Uncle Robert was taken away by the police who had rushed in. Taylor Corporation suffered severe damage to its vitality after being harshly investigated and punished for malicious market manipulation. The crisis at Johnson Group was completely resolved. Caleb, thanks to his calm and decisive performance in this incident, firmly secured his position as the sole heir. Afterwards, in Caleb's CEO office, he looked at me, his gaze full of helplessness and a hint of fondness. "So you're the so-called business prodigy?" "Of course," I said smugly, reclining in his executive chair. "Then what are your plans for the future?" he asked. "Return to the company, help me?" "No," I shook my head. "My ambition has always been only one." I looked at him and gave an exceptionally radiant smile. "Brother, from today on, you are my greatest support. From now on, you'll carry this family. I will just be responsible for looking beautiful as a flower and loafing around until I die." Caleb looked at me in this saltfish state and finally couldn't help but laugh. He walked over and handed me a card, black with a metallic sheen. "All right," he said. "From now on, don't call me brother anymore." I was taken aback. "Huh? You're going to sever our brotherhood?" "No," Caleb shook his head, a sly, mischievous smile curling at the corner of his mouth. "Call me boss. I will personally pay your salted fish salary from now on. The job duties are play games with me and don't steal my kills again." "Me?" I looked at the black heart in my hand, then at his face, so handsome it made gods and mortals alike furious. "Fine, I'll take this job. After all, I get to work for the world's most handsome and generous boss, and I don't even have to go to the office. Where else could I find a deal like this? My salted fish life is perfect